Just before we take a look at some top business headline, let's get into this conversation now. The Nigerian government has implemented a series of reforms aimed at improving the business environment in the country and making it easier for entrepreneurs and investors to start and operate businesses. Now, these reforms have focused on a range of areas, including streamlining business registration and licensing processes, simplifying tax payment and compliance, improving access to credit and financing, and enhancing the efficiency and transparency of government services. Now, recall the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council said in the week that it has executed more than 180 reforms aimed at making Nigeria a progressively better place to start and do business. According to the Special Advisor to the President on the Ease of Doing Business and Secretary of the PEBEC, Jumoke Oduwole, during Stakeholders Sensitization Program on the Business Facilitation Act 2022, which was recently signed into law by Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, most of the 180 reforms were targeted at impacting the life cycles of micro, small and medium enterprises to ensure they performed better in the economy. Well, let's get into some other details now. From 2016 to 2019, Nigeria increased its score in the World Bank's flagship Doing Business report by over 15.01 basis point and implemented about 140 reforms. Well, in the same period, Nigeria moved up 39 places in the World Bank Doing Business rankings and was twice named as one of top 10 most improved economies in the world. Well, let's get talking now. We have Olaidebanu, macroeconomic analyst. He joins us now to take a look at this and how these reforms will impact and change the Nigerian business landscape in the coming days. Well, thank you for joining us, Mr. Banu. We appreciate your time. Hello, Mr. Banu. Can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Yeah, so
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on board. Now, some critical questions that comes to mind regarding the recent implementation of 180 ease of doing business reforms, by the Nigerian government is that what specific reforms were implemented? Because of course there were quite a lot of them, but how were they implemented in terms of your assessment of them and how they address the challenges faced by businesses in Nigeria? Let's start from there.
Thank you once again. The Nigerian government have implemented so many of the reforms as been stated. It was stated that about 280 reforms were implemented, and the notable one among them, which are is the Tech Act.
Okay, I'm just nervous right now that might be too early to have that distortion in the connection there. But if you can hear me,
of the what you call it. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go on.
So it was a startup act that was signed by the president last year, and this actually is going to help the electronic economy, the e-economy we've been craving for. And also another one is going to the electricity side of the ease of doing business, which is the guideline, or let me call it a directive that was given to the disco companies to issue a prepaid meter for all consumers in the country. So this actually is going to ease up another ease of doing business in the sense of you will be sure of.
Let's go back to our conversation now. We have Olaidebanu, macroeconomic analyst on the show. So let's talk about the measure of success, right, and implementation as well, because these reforms obviously have not been tested in any way. They're just novel. Most of them are novel. So there has to be measures in place to measure the level of success so far, and of course implementation, because the concerns are that how will the government measure the success of these reforms with regards to metrics that will be used, and how will progress be tracked over time? Talk to us about this.
Yeah. Firstly, coming from the Startup Act that was signed, we need to know how many startup companies are being in the.
Well, I think Bano was trying to talk about the fact that we need to get data. Data is very, very important, because you need to know how many startups really are in operations across the state of the federation, and so.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I was saying, okay, we need to know the number of startup companies we have in the country. What is their revenue generation? What is their profit in terms of tax generation for the government itself? And also how government can come in when it comes to aids, in terms of when there is economic distress for those companies. Then in order to know how government can come into their aids. That's another aspect to it. Another one to it is, okay, we talk about the electronic payments of tax and by the FIRS and other state governments, like the Lagos state government we've had. So this one we need to know is how effective is this, and how much of the company can come into this in order to increase the government revenue from tax, and also how government can be in the aids of the company in order to know where to cushion the effect of economic distress on those companies. Because all this will be then when the company are well stabilized by the government.
Okay. I'd love you to finish that thought, Mr. Bano. Yes, quite important. We need to capture some of these statistics of operations of these startups across the federation. How many of them, how many of those companies are in operation? How much have they generated? How in tax? We need to track these, which of course can be, significant numbers and how we can use this data to address issues that may arise, some of the challenges that may arise later on. But talk to us. Are you there, Mr. Bano? Because I wanted you to talk to us about implementation. How do you suppose the government ensure that these reforms are implemented? To talk to us about the implementation part of it, because we need effective implementation. And when implementation is effective, we also need to look at the fairness of it, because again, how do they benefit all businesses in Nigeria, not just those with political connections or other advantages? Because as it is, those in who have political connections or who have an advantageous position could take advantage of these reforms to, to better themselves. So let's talk about the implementation process as well.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go on.
Yeah, on the implementation side of those reforms, the government will probably create a separate agency, not a ministry in that manner, a different agency to monitor the activities around the reforms, in order to say, okay, yes, this is the information we've gathered. Just like probably we've had the National Bureau of Statistics, which give various information about the economic figures we have in the country. So probably if there is kind of data, then we begin to see a well informed implementation to say, okay, yes, which agency, we have so many agencies in this country already, to know, okay, yes, so this kind of problem, this agency should be responsible for it. Looking at the startup, for example, now, there should be a kind of regulatory agency for them, aside from SEC and probably the CAC, in order to say, okay, yes, these are how to affect the startup companies and probably monitor their activities. So those are kind of reform, those are kind of implementations we begin to see, because you can't do anything without data. If there's no data for those information, for so many information, you can't take a meaningful decision.
Only yesterday, President Muhammadu Buhari inaugurated about 40-member council to oversee the operations of these startups in Nigeria with regards to fund distribution, task breaks and all of that for these as startups. Well, this is good initiative, but like we talk about, the implementation is also a key. So how do you think it should be monitored, really?
Yeah, the president have assigned the member, so I think it will be close monitored by the president himself to say, okay, this is the mandate you have been given to, and then what has been.
Well, I guess we're back to the same, concern again about distortion of these audio. But I would have loved to hear, because who is going to monitor this committee, this council that has just been inaugurated, who is going to monitor them? Because as it is, it's okay to come up with policies, initiatives, or schemes, but again, implementation, it's key. And so we also need to have perhaps a watchdog that can watch over this committee as well. So are you there, Mr. Bano?
Hamir, I can hear you clearly.
Yes, please go on.
So we are talking about the monitoring of the member inaugurated by the president yesterday. I think, okay, the president should have a close monitoring on the panel, on the members themselves, and also the responsibility can be given largely to the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, because it's largely talk about the startup companies and how they can take the economic benefits from the government and also from the general masses in that way. So I believe the monitoring, the implementation and the monitoring itself come with the responsibility given by the World Republic from the president himself.
Well, I think I agree with you on that. But let's look at the role. What role do you think, do you suppose civil society, and the private sector can play in monitoring the implementation of these reforms and provide feedback to the government? Because yes, the feedbacks are necessary, and then only private sector, perhaps civil society, can do that beyond the president monitoring this council that has just been inaugurated yesterday. Hello, Banu, can you hear me? I was asking you to talk to us about the place of civil society, the private sector in monitoring the implementation of these reforms, because as we know, of course, that been issue, providing feedback to government on this is important as well.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
So the responsibility of the private sector and the civil society organizations, we believe, okay, there should be a kind of a regular survey from their aspect to say, okay, yes, what are the challenges this startup company, or probably the ease of doing business from every part of the world, from every part of the country, not just because what the World Bank was doing was just specifically to Lagos and Kano majorly, but to every part of the country to say, okay, what have been the challenges they be facing, what have been their success over a period of time, to say, okay, yes, this side, the kind of reform in this side has been implemented and well utilized by those startup companies, and these are the challenges they be having, to know which side government needs to come up with. So this civil society needs to have a kind of periodic evaluation of the role of the companies, and then the companies too, in their own aspect, needs to come out truthfully to say, okay, this is the kind of success they've made. Because sometimes companies look for one way or the other. So many, especially the startup companies, look for one way or the other to boycott tax payments. So, and this is actually not helping the country in terms of, okay, yes, we are generating this for the government, in terms of, we are generating social amount from the startup companies, then this percentage of revenue generation too should go into the helping the startup companies. So by that way, I think they begin to see a good reform and a good implementation of those reforms. What we call it in the general startup companies.
Okay, just before I leave you or let you go, talk to us about this. Let's talk about challenges or obstacles that may arise during the implementation of these reforms with regards to resources that will be available to support businesses that might be affected by these challenges. And that is one. And the second one is that how do you think, that government will ensure that these reforms are sustainable over the long term? Because sustainability is very key. And that they continue to improve the business environment in Nigeria in the years to come, not just these reforms and then they go to sleep.
The major problem we're having in this country is not because of any other thing, but we lack the roadmap itself. To come together as a country to say this is our roadmap for the next 50 years. All those Vision 2030, Vision 2050 or kind of something, they are not well implemented. And so even though a government comes and a government goes, that roadmap will be there for everybody to follow. It's just the implementation. I don't want to see that probably I'm looking at a particular political side of the, what we call it. If you look at what has happened in Lagos State over a period of time, you can see there is a roadmap in that way. So what we lack is, we have this reform. What is our roadmap? What is our target in the next 20, 50 years? To see, this is what we want to achieve by this particular reform. And irrespective of who is in charge of monitoring the reform, we know that, yes, this is the responsibility given to this is the mandate given to this particular ministry, particular agency for the next 20 years, for the next so particular period of time. So what we actually lack most of the time is the implementation and also a proper vision going forward.